Now, what do you want to introduce?
Okay, well, okay, I meant right there.
This isn't a real,
I put this down.
this
so
isn't a
we'll
real
get on
classy
track
shirt
then.
here.
We'll put it out of the way. No, it is not, that's right.
Okay. This is,
Maybe I should put a jacket on.
whatever you're most comfortable with. This is Mr. Leonard Mitchell, and he's a World War II veteran. And this is who I'm interviewing.
Okay, you want me
Stop.
to stop?
You want me to tell you what kind? This is B-17G, 10 crew members, 13 50 caliber machine guns, range about 1,800 miles, carried 2,750 gallons of fuel, carried on up to 8,000 pound bomb load, and was instrumental in defeating Germany. And they flew their first mission. This is the 8th Air Force that I'm speaking of. Flew their first mission August 17th, 1942, and the last mission April the April 16th, 1945, and did one tremendous amount of damage to the German war machine. Typical B-17G crew: pilot, bombardier, navigator, co-pilot, top turret gunner, and engineer. He's the ball turret gunner. He's a waist gunner, tail gunner.
And you are right there?
Me. At typical rank in the B-17 was starting out 4 second lieutenants, tech sergeant, and 5 staff sergeants. Infantry, so consequently I volunteered to get in the aviation cadet program, and I got in. I was finally passed all the tests and became an aviation cadet in February 1942.
Okay, so what do you remember about Pearl Harbor?
I was in seeing a movie. When we came out, the extras were out, and we were in a state of shock. It was the news. Everything was the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor, and the picture that I'd seen was an Abbott and Costello picture. Went from something funny into something real bad.
How old were you at the time?
I went into the Air Force I was 21.
And what job did you work for?
I worked for Hoosier Lamp and Stamping in the production control department as a production control expediter. That meant I delivered parts on a cart from one place to another.
Okay, so to avoid being infantry, you joined the Air Force?
Yes. And I got lucky, and I passed the first physical. Then they gave us, you either had to have 2 years of college or pass a comprehensive mental test, which I did. And so I was sworn in at Bowman Field, Louisville, Kentucky, as an aviation cadet.
Did you say you were volunteered or drafted?
Volunteer.
Okay, and what did you feel about the draft?
I thought it was a good idea. Everybody thought it was a good idea. But I wanted to be in the Air Force because it seemed to be a much better place to be.
Okay, and when you got to the Air Force, what happened then?
I went to Santa Ana, California, and went through our first aviation cadet training, and then we were given a series of tests to determine what our classification should be, whether it should be pilot, our bombardier, or navigator. And I was classified as a pilot trainee. I went to Thunderbird Field. Everything was a field or a base then. Thunderbird Field near Phoenix, Arizona, and took primary training and didn't do very well on my landing, so they washed me out of pilot training and reclassified me as a bombardier. And I went to Roswell, New Mexico, to the bombardier school there, completed that. Then I went to March Air Force Base at Riverside, California, and I took navigation training there.
Okay, and I guess, when did you go to Europe then?
Well, after I completed my navigation training, I went to the 396th Bomb Group, Sacramento, California, and flew in B-25s on anti-sub patrol out over the ocean. And then I was transferred to San Francisco as a bomber liaison officer at the San Francisco Air Defense Wing, which was downtown San Francisco. Then I went from there to Portland, Oregon as a bomber liaison officer at the Portland Air Defense Wing. Then a group of us, not knowing what combat consisted of, decided that we wanted combat, that we didn't want to sit there in the States doing nothing, so we were obliged. They transferred us to operational training. I went to Rapid City, South Dakota, and went through operational training. That's where we trained as crews, bomber crews. After we completed that, I got a short leave and went to England and joined the 8th Air Force.
Okay, I guess from there, wherever you get done.
Well, okay, started flying missions. I had a lot of ear trouble. I was supposed to fly 25, and I was grounded so much with ear trouble that in the meantime, they raised the number of missions to 30, and I still had ear trouble. They raised the number of missions to 35, but I'd flown so many by then, I got credit for 3 missions, so they said, let's see, I got credit for all but 2 missions, so they said, well, you've only got to fly 33 missions. No, yeah, 33 missions, and I got shot down over Düsseldorf, Germany on my 32nd mission. Almost made it.
Almost. I guess I should have asked this before. Was it difficult to go from civilian life to military life?
No.
Not at all. Okay.
As a matter of fact, at the very first, the discipline I wasn't used to. I was used to doing as I pleased, and there they told me what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. But I learned that the best thing to do was to do what they told you to do, and I caught on pretty quickly, and it worked out very well.
Okay. I guess we'll go back to when you were shot down. Was it the whole plane? I guess obviously went down.
When I was shot down, we lost 2 engines over the target, which was Misburg, which was an oil refinery near Hanover. And see, I got to think sometimes because that was a long time ago. After we lost both engines, we were low on oil, therefore we couldn't feather. There were the 2 outboard engines, we couldn't feather the props, so The prop on number 4 engine, that's a right-hand engine, ran away and finally came off. Fortunately, it didn't hit the plane. The propeller on the number 1 engine continued to windmill. That produced extra drag, so we kept losing altitude, which wasn't good. And we threw everything that we could possibly throw out of the plane: our guns, our ammunition, our flak suits. I was flying navigator that day. The bombardier threw my maps away too. Of course, our radio compass was out anyway. Flak, in the lower we got, more accurate flak was. Finally, the flak, which is anti-aircraft fire, the flak finally damaged the plane severely. We had a 3-foot hole in the left wing. They shot off part of the wingtip on the right wing. They shot one of the remaining engines off, and the very last thing that happened was that they set the wing tanks on fire on the right wing. Then it was time to get out of the plane. We were flying a 9-man crew. 6 of us got out. The pilot, co-pilot, and waist gunner were killed. The radio operator was burned severely. I didn't have a scratch.
You have a scratch. And these are the guys.
This was my original crew. They finished up before I did, but they went back to the States.
So you're with a different crew right now?
Yeah, I was with a different crew.
Okay, so when you bailed out,
You want the exact, everything that happened? I jumped out. I jumped out of the nose hatch. That's this up front here. Let's see. That jumped out there. On the bottom of the plane, there's a nose hatch. For some reason, my hands caught the edge of the door, and I hung there for a while. Then I let go. Then I pulled the ripcord on the chute. Ripcord was right here.
Yeah.
I didn't pull it hard enough, and the chute didn't open. Then I pulled it again. That time the chute opened, but I was getting pretty close to the ground. As a matter of fact, I swung, let's see, this way, that way, and when I was swinging this way, that's when I hit the ground. I hit the ground hard. I sprained both ankles, wrenched my knee, landed on my back. There was some wind blowing, and the chute kind of dragged me on my back until it hit a barbed wire fence, and then the air spilled out of it. And by that time, the Germans were on me. What I failed to mention was that I landed at a German command post.
Oh no. Things didn't go your way then.
So by the time I got my harness off, my parachute harness off, there was a German guard standing over me, and the end of the rifle was about there. And of course I gave up.
Okay, and I guess they took you to a...
They took me into the command post and sat me down. I came down away from the rest of the crew, so I was by myself,
Yeah.
wondering what in God's name was going to happen next. So then German Oberleutnant, that's the equivalent of our first lieutenant, brought me an apple and a cup of milk, and said to me in kind of broken English, "For you, the war is over," which was true.
Oh, so, and what year was this?
That was November 26, 1944.
44.
Yeah.
And I guess, can you describe the camp they took you to? Oh, was it camp, I guess?
Huh?
Was that camp, I guess, you should call it?
I went, first I was locked up with a group of infantry and field artillery people that had been fighting in Aachen, Germany. That Aachen was the first place that we penetrated the German border. And they captured them before they captured us. See, finally the bombardier was brought in, and he and I were the only ones out of the crew that were together.
Yeah.
And they sent us to interrogation center. We went to several different places and ended up in Stalag Luft 1 up in northeast Germany, up in Pomerania.
And I guess, and then, when did you find out the war ended then? How
We
did
had
you
a
know?
secret radio, and we kept in tune to BBC, that's British Broadcasting, and we learned that we pretty much kept up on the progress of the Russians, because the Russians were the closest ones to us. They're the ones that liberated us. Actually, we woke up one morning, and the German guards were gone, and then we knew that the Russians were real close. So next day, we sent out a couple of guys, one that could speak Russian, and they located the Russians and told them that we were up there to please not fire artillery up there.
How do you feel about your German guards?
They were friendly. All the German guards could speak English very well. That's so that they could listen in on our conversations.
Okay.
Our prison camp was first under the jurisdiction of the Luftwaffe, and then the Wehrmacht, and then for a short time the SS, and they weren't quite as friendly as the others. And then back to the Wehrmacht. We ended up finally the guards at our prison camp were mostly World War I veterans.
Not their last leg there. Okay, then the Russians liberated you and you came home?
They flew us out of there. The Russians wanted us to march, and we said there were 9,000 of us in that prison camp, and our senior officers talked them out of it. Said, no, we're going to be flown out of here. We'll just wait here. And the Russians finally went along with it. They didn't want to, but they did.
What kind of welcome did you get when you came home? The typical welcome you see in East Coast?
Actually, most of the people had come home, and I came home kind of unnoticed.
You noticed? Okay.
One more time, I didn't get it on here.
All right. VE Day was May the 8th. That's the end of the official end of the World War II in Europe. I got out of the prison camp May the 13th, and was flown to Rouen, France, where I waited until they had room for us on a ship at Le Havre, France, and from there we came over to Camp Patrick Henry in New Jersey.
On May 18th, you said?
We didn't get out of our camp. We flew out of Stalag Luft 1 area on the 13th of May to Rouen, France, and there we were held in a camp where they have a certain name for it. I forget what it is now. They named these camps after cigarettes, and I was in Camp Lucky Strike. But that was a camp where they were holding all ex-prisoners of war, pending room for a ship, to take us from Le Havre, France, back to the United States. And got out of there finally early June.
Oh, so you had to wait a while.
Yes. Yes, there were a lot of us. And I had a low priority because I wasn't banged up like some of the others.
Did you believe in the justice of World War II? Do you believe in the cause of it?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
So, we're patriotic then.
Yes. Actually, I'm glad I did what I did.
So you do it again?
Yeah, I would. Now, when you fight in a war, it's a thankless job. But then I feel that I did the right thing. I didn't want the United States to be speaking Japanese or German.
When did the Japanese surrender? Do you know that?
You know what?
When did the Japanese surrender? I know the Germans surrendered before. But, well, I guess what I'm getting at is, were you home when they dropped the atom bomb?
Yes, I was home. If I remember correctly, the Japanese war, the war with Japan was officially over in August
So,
1945.
what was your reaction to that bomb?
Well, actually, I was happy about it because just prior to that, I was in at Midland Army Air Force Base in Texas, halfway between Midland and Odessa, Texas, and I was going through a refresher course, and from there I would have gone to the South Pacific.
Did you feel that it's necessary for that bomb to be dropped?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. According to the calculations of the experts at that time, had the American forces invaded Japan, our losses would have been 1 million or so. And the Japanese were expecting an invasion. They had saved back 5,000 aircraft and a lot of troops and a lot of firepower, and they were ready. And as you know, the Japanese don't mind dying in combat.
No. What one lesson do you think I should learn from remembering World War II?
The way things have turned out, I'm not quite sure.
Okay,
One lesson that we should have learned from World War II. You can only fight a war one way, and that is to win. You can't fight a war like we fought in Korea or especially Vietnam. You've got to fight to win. Otherwise, you accomplish nothing.
So what happened after the war? I mean, did you stay in the military for a while?
A short while.
Then you went back to work, I assume at your old job?
No, not at the old job. I didn't go back to the old job. Let's see now. I guess the first place that I went to work was for the State Highway Department. It's now called the Indiana Department of Transportation, in the Bridge Design Department.
Okay.
And then I was commissioned in the reserves, so I joined the reserve unit. In May of 1951, I got called back into service
51. So,
for the Korean War.
did you go there? Oh, I guess we might as well. Do you mind me asking questions about that?
Huh?
That thing goes.
Served there at Atterbury Air Force Base there at Columbus, Indiana, and then I went to a personnel classification and assignment school, Lowry Air Force Base in Denver, or outside of Denver. Then I was, for a while I was adjutant of the motor vehicle squadron. For a short while I was commanding officer of the motor vehicle squadron. I was a base personnel officer. Then I took over the motor pool, and then I got transferred to the Clark Air Force Base in the Philippine Islands. And then she came over there with Alan. And I was in the 581st Air Resupply and Communications Wing, but I didn't fly anymore. I was not flying any longer. and that was a B-29 outfit. That was a psychological warfare outfit. We had many bilingual officers in that. I ran the motor pool there too. I was squadron adjutant of the 581st Motor Vehicle Squadron, but we also took care of the vehicles for the 13th Air Force, and that was 13th Air Force headquarters.
Okay, well, this is really a World War II interview, but do you have time to ask questions about Korea? Ask you some questions about Korea?
Yeah. It didn't compare favorably with World War II. We held back too much. Wars should be fought by the generals, not by the politicians.
Okay, and were you in the Air Force over there, or were you part of that? What did you say it was?
Yeah, I was in the Air Force, 581st Air Resupply and Communications Wing, and they had B-29s. As a matter of fact, one of our B-29s was lost over China. They miscalculated and they were shot down, and they were held, and that's a crew that was tried as spies. But they were held for 17 months and finally released.
What is your opinion of the Korean activity right now?
Not from personal experience, because I wasn't over there, but I had a brother-in-law that was over there. He was Corps Engineering Advisor with the 1st Republic of Korea Corps. He was West Point trained officer. And from what I gathered, they had a couple of pretty tight places that they got into, especially when the Chinese came across the Yalu River. And at that time, General Douglas MacArthur wanted to take some drastic action, and Harry Truman wouldn't let him. He wanted to drop an A-bomb on him.
So, well, North Korea's been in the news lately. What do you think about that?
Now?
Yes.
Being an ex-prisoner of war, I don't like the idea of reestablishing trade with North Korea, because I frankly don't trust them. And I believe that they're, they were helped considerably by the Russians. And I think that there's still some Russian influence, and I really don't think the Cold War is completely over.
Then war broke out, you think that we could see something different with Russia?
I really don't think the Russians have our best interest at heart. I really don't.
Okay, well, I guess we'll stop there. Mr. Mitchell, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have another story.
This was in August, and I'd already flown quite a few missions. And the object of the missions at this time were, of course, to bomb Germany's war machine, but also another very important thing was to draw up the Luftwaffe, because we had to get rid of the Luftwaffe before we could actually win the war. So we were sent in squadron formation, and a squadron formation is 12 airplanes, to bomb the target near Berlin. So they routed us all around Berlin so we would be sure and draw up some fighters, which we succeeded in doing. In a squadron formation, you've got a low flight, which consists of 6 airplanes. That's 3 in this element, 3 back of that lead 3, then 3 in the lead, a little bit higher and in front of, and then the high, which is a little bit back of and still to the right. So you've got a total of 12 airplanes. We were approaching the target. We were on the IP, which is the initial point. And from there, you take no evasive action whatsoever. and we got jumped by 40 FW-190s. Now there were 12 of us, and our formation was loose because another group, another squadron of airplanes had turned into us, and we kind of turned away from them. And when you do that, you spread out, and the German fighter pilots watched for that, and they saw a golden opportunity, so they attacked from the rear in two flights of about 20 each. And FW-190 is armed with 4 20-millimeter cannons. So they came in, and the entire attack took less than 5 minutes. Every time I looked around, it seemed like a B-17 was falling off on fire. We got to the target, ready to drop the bombs. We had no airplanes back of us. Our 2 wingmen were gone, and 1 out of the high element was gone. The fighters accounted for 6 of the 12 of us, so we were leading the low, what had been the low flight, except we were by ourselves. They got everybody beside us and behind us, and I thought sure that we were going to get it, but we didn't. And our bombing was terrible, ragged, because that kind of shakes you up. And when I got back to England, we made it back to England, I had an awful hard time lighting a cigarette. I mean, I had to shake something fierce. As a matter of fact, they debriefed us and sent us on leave immediately. Gave us a 3-day pass to London. But I was scared.
I bet you were.
The prisoner of war pictures that was taken of him when he was captured.
And they got a direct hit that came up, the shell came up through the ball turret and exploded inside the plane, killing the ball turret gunner, blowing him up actually. Blew the Y operator, who was in the same compartment with the radio operator, blew him out of the airplane, blew the radio operator up against the bulkhead, and I went over, I saw this airplane, and it actually was bending as it flew. It's amazing that they ever got back to the base, but they did. And I had a chance to look inside that plane after we all landed. It was a pretty big mess. You wouldn't expect an airplane like that to fly, but it did.
Okay, this is the letter that the War Department sent your parents.
Yes.
When he was captured, says, "Dear Mrs. Mitchell, this letter is to confirm my recent telegram in which you were regretfully informed that your son, Second Lieutenant Leonard E. Mitchell, 0739045 Air Corps, has been reported missing in action over Germany since 26 November 1944. And this is dated the 30th of December 1944. And this goes on to tell more about it. Can you explain what this is again, please?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was able to get my hands on and bring back.
He has a German helmet. I think it has a bullet hole in it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But glad we never find it. It's in that close.